That's
Yeah.
what it's about. And I'm going to allow attendees to join now.
Sure. Okay. Is the sun shining in Victoria?
It is beautiful.
Nice. Those of you just joined, and we'll get started in about 2 minutes here. We'll get some more people coming in. I'm sure there'll be a lot of late arrivals, including one of our speakers, but that's all good. So just hang tight a couple minutes. We'll give it another minute and a half or so, folks. Just hang tight. We'll grab your coffee, grab your tea, water, or alcoholic beverage if you're so inclined, but it's not 5 o'clock yet, so not that that matters to some people. Okay, about another 30 seconds and we'll just get rolling here. Okay, let's get going. Steph's going to let people in as we go, and we're also broadcasting live on our Facebook page, so there's lots of people watching on that too. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Oh, there's Minister Farnworth just joined us. We're just getting started here while he's trying to connect in, get technology going. Thanks everybody for coming out today. Really appreciate it. The Chamber's been working really hard over these past 4 months now, just about, since we've been in COVID-19 pandemic, to keep you informed, keep you up to date, and keep you connected with all the goings-ons and the important people in the various levels of government. And we're delighted today to have Minister Robinson and Mr. Farnworth with us, both local MLAs, and they'll get a formal introduction in just a second. We're also really delighted to have our one of our key sponsors or key partners, the Port of Vancouver here. And I've got Duncan Wison from the Port of Vancouver here to introduce both the ministers. The Port's been really great at working with all the chambers across the Lower Mainland, because they're an integral part of the transportation network in our country. And Duncan will talk a little bit more about what the Port does and what they do locally too. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn over to Duncan Wison. Duncan is Vice President for Environment, Community, and Government Affairs for the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority, and he's responsible for the stewardship of the Port of Vancouver. And he'll say a few words about the port and introduce the ministers. Duncan, over to you.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we're gathered virtually on the traditional territories of the Coquitlam, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, and to extend our thanks to them. I'm pleased to be here today on behalf of the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority. Our role is to enable trade through the Port of Vancouver while ensuring safety, environmental protection, and consideration for communities. We recognize that the COVID-19 pandemic has caused major challenges for businesses and for chambers, and we stand with you at this time. Tangibly, we're advancing more than $1 billion worth of infrastructure projects across the Lower Mainland right now. These projects, together with strong ongoing trade to the port, are helping boost this region's economy and this country's economy. That's happening because these projects support jobs, they help sustain the local companies we contract with, and they inject investment dollars into our region at this critical time. These include road and rail projects across the Lower Mainland that deliver trade capacity, but also that mitigate problems like traffic congestion and emissions in local communities. Among these, we have worked with two key projects in the Tri-Cities area that we've received federal funding to study. We've achieved those funds with collaboration with local communities, so thank you. One project is the Coquitlam Rail Corridor Improvement Project, which aims to eliminate the at-grade crossings at Pitt River Road and find an improved access point for Coquitlam First Nation and the BC Forensic Hospital, both who currently access their property via Colony Farm Road. Our second project in the Tri-Cities area is the Westwood Street Rail Crossings Improvement Project, which aims to eliminate the at-grade crossings along Westwood Street near Davies Avenue and Kennedy Avenue. If you're interested in updates on the Westwood project, you can sign up for the project email list on our website, and we'll be holding a public engagement period on that project shortly. Going forward, we hope to work with the Tri-Cities communities to advocate for federal funding to deliver these projects, and we hope to work with the Chamber and local businesses on that. Beyond road and rail projects, the Port Authority is also delivering vital container terminal capacity to the port, so that Canadian and local companies can import and export as they need to. We're building that through our container terminal expansions at Centerm on the downtown waterfront, which is currently under construction, and through our proposed Roberts Bank Terminal 2 project in Delta, which would support over 12,000 long-term high-paying jobs. That's a quick overview of some of our key work. And now it's my pleasure to introduce, which minister am I introducing first now? We've got Mr. Farnworth on, so are we starting with Mr. Farnworth again?
Sure.
Okay.
The oldest.
So they changed my script on me. So it's now my pleasure to introduce my friend, the Honorable Mike Farnworth, Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General. Minister Farnworth was re-elected as MLA for Port Coquitlam in 2017. He was first elected as MLA for Port Coquitlam Burke Mountain in 1991 and re-elected in 1996, 2005, 2009, and 2013. He was appointed Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General in July 2017 and serves as Government House Leader. Previously, Minister Farnworth served as the official opposition spokesperson for Justice, Public Safety and Solicitor General, and as the official opposition caucus House Leader. He was raised in Port Coquitlam and has lived there for more than 40 years. He was elected to Port Coquitlam City Council for 3 terms in 1983, 1985, and 1990. As an MLA, Minister Farnworth has served in numerous cabinet roles, including as Minister of Health, Minister of Employment and Investment, and Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. From 2001 to 2004, he worked in Bulgaria, the Balkans, and then Iraq on democratic governance programs to help build multi-party democracies in former one-party states. Minister Farnworth, thank you for joining us today, and a big thank you to you, Minister Robinson, and your government for the leadership amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. British Columbia has been a standout province, not just in Canada, but a standout jurisdiction in the world in these challenging times, so thank you for your hard work. I'll now invite Minister Farnworth to share some remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan, and thank you very much to the Chamber of Commerce for hosting us today. Before we get going, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining you virtually from the traditional territory of the Esquimalt and Tonghese First Nations. And I'm going to keep my remarks brief because I'd like to spend time listening to all of you about your concerns. And I think all of us agree that this is a remarkable time we are living through right now. I don't think any of us ever expected to be dealing with. The impact of COVID-19 on not just on our interpersonal relationships, but our economy has been profound and is not going to be ending anytime soon. But I think all of us can be really pleased with how in British Columbia, regardless of political stripe, regardless of where you live, we've come together to flatten the curve in this province in a way that is literally envy of many jurisdictions in North America. It has changed significantly how we interact with each other. It's had an enormous impact on business. More people are shopping online, spend less on restaurants and travel. Things look significantly different than they did back in January. I mean, who would have thought that we would be lining up or going from store to store to find yeast? The amount of home baking that has taken place has been significant. Anyway, Solicitor General, I have a role in terms of the Emergency Management Act, which the state of emergency which we are currently under here in British Columbia, and the orders that come out through my ministry. And so we have today, for example, just extended the state of emergency for I can see it being in place for a little bit longer, along with other orders that are currently there. But with that, I'll just finish my remarks saying that I look forward to your questions, and I look forward to being able to have some discussion here this afternoon.
Great, thank you. And Duncan, over to you to introduce Minister Robinson.
Thank you. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Selina Robinson, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Minister Robinson was elected as the MLA for Coquitlam-Millardville in 2013 and re-elected in 2017. She is the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing and Minister of Citizen Services. She served as the official opposition spokesperson for mental health and addictions, seniors, local government, and sports. Minister Robinson was born and raised in the suburbs of Montreal before relocating to Richmond with her family, and she's been actively engaged in the Coquitlam community since moving there more than 20 years ago. She's a former city councillor who fought to protect the health of children and families by introducing a local ban on cosmetic pesticides and worked to improve access for people with disabilities as chair of the Coquitlam Universal Accessibility Advisory Committee. Prior to being elected, Minister Robinson had a home-based family therapy practice, was the director of development for Share Family and Community Services, and was a counseling instructor and program developer at the University of British Columbia's Life and Learning Center and Vancouver Community College. I'd like to thank Minister Robinson and her staff for discussions we've had recently about the challenge of the Lower Mainland's disappearing industrial land. Those lands represent about 4% of the land base and support 27% of the jobs, so they're critical to our economy and keeping jobs in this region. At the Port Authority, we're calling for a coherent regional land planning structure led by the province to protect these lands and the jobs they represent for this region. Minister Robinson, thank you for your attention to this challenging but critical issue for our region, and thank you for joining us today. I now invite Minister Robinson to share some remarks. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having me, and I want to thank the Chamber for hosting us. And I am speaking to you from the territory of the Esquimalt and the Songhees Nation, and I feel very privileged to be able to work from their beautiful lands. I'm going to certainly echo what you heard from Mike, the two Mikes, I guess, around what's happened around the COVID response. This was nothing any of us predicted or necessarily planned in detail for, but I also think that the reason that we have done so well is because we're British Columbians. Frankly, I think it's because British Columbians care about each other and they have come together to flatten the curve. Part of my role as the Minister for Municipal Affairs has been to reach out to local governments, and did that from the get-go weekly for the first 5 or 6 weeks. And so there's 189 local governments, and I had regional calls on Thursdays talking to mayors right around this province. And what I heard in every part of this province was a commitment to work together, regardless of political stripe, regardless of order of government, that we were in this together, that we were going to do everything that we could as representatives of the people who elected us to make sometimes really difficult decisions, that we were going to do right by the people who put us in these decision-making places. And so I think we have to be proud of collectively as British Columbians for working together to deliver for each other, for our families, and for our future. We don't know where this is going to take us. There's certainly lots of concern that there will be what does a second wave look like? But I also have optimism about, I think we've done the hardest part. This landed in our lap. We responded. And I wanted to give a shout out to the Tri-Cities Chamber and particularly to Mike Hind for his work. And I have to say, and I know he's not going to like hearing this, but he's going to have to struggle through this. Because I think the Chamber has done an outstanding job of communicating with Chamber members. Certainly as the MLA, I was getting updates regularly about what was happening. And I know he's got good staff doing that work, but it really felt like I was being taken care of. I was seeing another organization step up and take care of each other. That gave me comfort knowing that, okay, someone's doing that, then I can focus here. And we were all able to do that because we said, let's all make the best out of this and make sure that we can survive this. The other shout out I want to give to Michael in particular was the work that he did around Novo Industries in manufacturing. And it's because of the relationship that he has with a local business that Jason Zanata is the owner of this manufacturer in Coquitlam, and they traditionally make pillows and dog beds. And when Jason saw that the demand for his product was going to be diminishing through COVID, Jason saw that there was an opportunity for him to really use his capacity, his knowledge, his connections to shift focus. And he reached out to Michael at the Chamber and said, who do I talk to? How do I do this? I need to connect with government. And Mike right away used his contacts with me and with Minister Farnworth. And we were able together to say, okay, let's figure this out for Jason so that he could manufacture masks that were desperately needed as part of the PPE supply. And now Jason is doing N95 respirators he's got another line going in his operation. And we're all benefiting because of that. So I want to take this opportunity. It's been the first opportunity that I've had to publicly acknowledge the work that Michael Hind has been doing as the CEO of the Chamber. And it's because of those relationships that he has that the province, and I think actually the nation, is going to benefit from that. So thank you, Michael, and thank you to the Chamber.
Thank you. Key point in there, I hire really good staff because they do the bulk of the work. So thanks to my staff for all the work they've done, and it's been a pleasure serving the community, and we continue to build on that. And thanks to Selina, the story about Jason Novo, I texted her and said, what do we do? And she said, 2 words, she got back on it. She got on it, and then it took a couple weeks because right at the beginning, and the file hit Mike's desk apparently, and it took Mike about 5 minutes to say, we're doing this, because he was in charge of the procurement file. And Mike saw it and went, no, we're doing this, let's get it done. And the story just continues to evolve. It's a great news story for the Tri-Cities and for the country, the province and the country. So thanks to everybody for doing it. That's the way this should work, is that things like that come up and we reach out and we work together to get it done. So thank you too for making that happen. You guys jumped on that right away. So we'll get started. Now, a couple housekeeping things. There's a Q&A at the bottom. If people are watching, want to ask questions, please fire them in there. I've got some in front of me here already. On Facebook, if you want to ask questions there, go ahead. Steph will get them to me. Big thanks to Duncan at the port for all their support. And they've gone out and purchased $350 gift cards to 3 local businesses, which we will give away randomly at the end of the day to Coquitlam Forest and Port Coquitlam, Pasta Polo, and Gabby and Jules. So we're giving away $150 to each of those fine establishments at the end of the day. Thanks to Port for doing that. So we'll get started here with some questions. Make sure you go in the Q&A if you want to ask. But I'm going to start out, go off a little bit off the top here. I see we got 18 new cases today, just announced. So that's not bad, but we got to be vigilant. We got to stay the course, and we have to not let this get out of hand. And everybody's got to stay focused on what the objective is here. So 18 is a little bit up from where we've been. So to me, it's a reminder to stay the course. Comments?
Sure. Yeah, I think Dr. Henry has been very good at communicating with all of us as British Columbians and asking us to do our part. And she's been very clear from the get-go that we all have a responsibility here. So she said it is around. It won't be eliminated until we have herd immunity. And the only way to get herd immunity is through a vaccine, and we don't have a vaccine. So what that means is that we all have a responsibility to each other and to ourselves, you know, to wash our hands, to keep 2 meter distance. If you can't keep the 2 meter distance, then of course, you know, you use a mask. But really, and if you're sick, stay home, protect everyone else. And so it sounds simple, and I know that it's hard because it means not being with people that you care about. It means not being social in ways that we have traditionally. And there's a lot of sacrifice that gets made as a result of that. And so I'm grateful for those who are making sacrifices every day. But we are all in this together, and we all have to keep doing what we're doing.
Absolutely.
I just want to add on that, Mike, that what this also speaks to is one of the issues that we are dealing with as a province, in fact, all provinces are, and that is the issue of the border with the United States, our large trading partner. As you know, there's a significant list of essential services, and so essential service workers continue to go back and forth across the border. But this issue of the fact of keeping that caseload down, and we're seeing what's happening south of us, is one of the reasons why I do not believe that you will be seeing the border with the U.S. opening anytime soon. And it's certainly been the position of the province has been taking with federal government that we can't afford to jeopardize the progress that we have made here by opening that border too soon.
Okay, I agree wholeheartedly, and I think you guys, the province was at the front of advocating for closing the border early on, and that made a huge difference in things. So I think Minister Dix and Dr. Henry have done an amazing job, and we're proud to have them on our side. So Mike, I'm going to go right to you right now because I just see you have announced a special committee to look at reforming the policing system in the province. Just announced it an hour ago. This could include training and related issues. So top of mind, especially south of the border. Do you want to talk about that really quickly?
Yeah, so policing in British Columbia is governed by the Police Act, which is a 45 piece of legislation that really is out of date in the way that policing has evolved, the challenges that police face in our province, you know, just from technology alone. And given the attention that we are seeing right now on policing, not here in British Columbia, but right across the country, in fact, globally, this is an opportune time for us to significantly bring the Police Act into the 21st century. So we've looked at, we created an all-party committee to go out and come back with recommendations on reforming the Police Act. So, and looking at issues such as mental health, that has been an issue that, you know, the police have been dealing with, issues of systemic racism, but accountability, governance, oversight, training, all those things that go into policing, and this is why we've set up this committee that'll report back by May the 14th next year with recommendations to go into a new Police Act.
Fantastic. I think it's probably long overdue, and it's just shone a light. The current situation has shone a light on the need to do that. So getting into some other questions, I'm going to talk about housing for a bit. I'll go to Minister Robinson right off the top here. And talk about BC housing projects in the Tri-Cities. How many, one of our members is asking how many projects have we had BC housing and their effect on the Tri-Cities community? What is it, what's your perception of how it's been, how it's worked so far?
Great, well, thanks for that. And I think it's also important to recognize that, you know, we have a housing crisis and we committed as a government to deliver 114,000 homes over 10 years. In partnership with local governments, with the private sector, with the not-for-profit sector, so, and with Indigenous sector as well, Indigenous communities. So we have been diligent on that file. We have about 23,000 homes that have been identified for building. We have about a little over 4,000 that are open, and 7,000 that are actively under construction, and the remainder are in developments, various stages of development. But in the Tri-City specifically, there's 11 projects. There are 6 in Coquitlam, 3 in Port Coquitlam, 2 in Port Moody. We're always looking for more. In fact, we just opened up our community housing fund for an additional 3,000 homes. So if there are projects in the Tri-Cities that where there's appetite to build affordable housing that is mixed income housing, then we can do more. And what those 11 projects add up to are 640 homes in total. And so what that means for people in the Tri-Cities, it means that people who have certainly some really low income can get some housing, some decent housing that meets their needs, that's safe, and that's affordable. It also means that middle income families, where, you know, they're perhaps it's a teacher and a grocery clerk that are looking for a home, and that meets their needs. So middle income families typically, you know, about $73,000 a year might be, you know, what their income is. And so they too need housing. And so we're building housing for that group as well. There's certainly lots of other projects going on around certainly the Lower Mainland. Some people may have heard that we've bought some hotels recently for people who are formerly homeless, and they're in desperate need of housing and supports that come with that. But what we're doing when we're buying those sorts of properties is we're looking at what the long-term opportunities are for redevelopment of those properties, so we can build long-term permanent housing. So we have lots going on, and lots in the Tri-Cities as well.
And how is it working? And I know the question was fairly specific that was submitted, and I don't want to really get into the specifics, but how is it working with the different city councils? Because if they delay something, if you cost a developer hundreds of thousands of dollars, literally in carrying costs, to get the project off the ground, how do we get past that, or how do we work through that to get these projects approved quicker at all levels and get all the different levels of government involved that need to be, and move it quicker? Because the developers are carrying these high mortgages and high costs, and a delay of a year could cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I've heard that consistently. In fact, about 6 months into my role as minister, I've had some significant meetings with the development sector, and they highlighted 2 things that were increasing cost pressures for them. The first one was land costs. And so we brought in a rental-only zone. We're the only jurisdiction in North America to have that. We're starting to see the uptake of that. And what that does is it takes land and identifies it for rental-only zoning, so it doesn't compete with the same stratified opportunities. And then housing is, the land for this kind of housing doesn't increase in value the same way. So that helps with some of the land costs, so we can get rental. And the other thing that we heard certainly was the development approval process is getting bogged down. And it's a layered process that has been layered for year after year after year after year. And so we took a review of that entire process. We published a report pre-COVID, because it all becomes a blur pre-COVID, but just before, I want to say last fall. We've, since COVID, I will share that it's slowed down some of that work, but we're picking it back up in the last month. We're identifying ways to move things faster, both internally in government, because provincial government also has permitting, whether it's environment or forest lands, natural resource development. There's permitting that happens inside provincial government, but certainly with local governments, and we're identifying best practices. And one example that came to light just through this process, which I think was absolutely fascinating, and I'm encouraging local governments to adopt it, it's in Kelowna. They put their most experienced permitting person at the front desk, not the least experienced. So traditionally, the new person comes in, they're at the front desk, they make sure that all the forms are there, and then they put it on a pile. And then at some point later that month, it goes to the senior person who will sign off, and that can take a long time. What they do in Kelowna is they say, well, we're going to put our most experienced person at the front, so that as it comes in, they can just sign it and say, here you go. It's good to go. And so other communities are learning about this and making those sorts of decisions. So we're paying attention to the whole range of things to do to make that move faster. And I've certainly heard that time is money, and we're committed to shrinking that time frame so that we can get better affordability in housing.
That's fantastic. One of my sayings is never let a good crisis go to waste. And I think this has shone a light on a number of issues that we're work on expediting things where it be the legal system, which the Attorney General is looking at updating that to make it better so we can come out of this even better, more streamlined in a lot of ways. I'm going to switch to Minister Farnworth now and talk about cannabis, one of your favorite topics. I think you guys have done a great job getting it going and making it legal. But the question is, what is the minister and the government doing to support cannabis cultivators and processors in British Columbia? We have seen licensed producers in BC shed over 2,000 legal cannabis jobs in the last 4 months. And the legal cannabis companies still cannot access traditional debt or borrow through the Farm Credit Canada like other agricultural businesses can. So that's their concern. What do you got for them?
There are a couple of things. First, on the production side, the licensing is done by Health Canada at the federal level. The process is responsible for the retail sector. We have seen a shedding of jobs on the production side as what many people predicted, which was so much capacity coming on stream that there's going to be some consolidation within the industry that has been taking place. One of the things that our focus has been to encourage the development of craft cannabis, small-scale production, particularly in those parts of the province where cannabis has historically helped underpin, even though it was illegal, helped underpin the local economy. And the Kootenays is the obvious place that comes into mind. So we've been pushing Health Canada and the federal government very hard to come up with small-scale micro licenses and to deal with the issue of farm credit as well. My understanding is that they are now able to access the products of Farm Credit Canada in the same way that other agricultural products are. We've also initiated a community futures program to assist in small-scale producers being able to navigate the Health Canada licensing process. On top of that, now we're now seeing, we've seen a significant increase in the number of retail outlets here in British Columbia. We're now up to about 250 private sector stores. On top of that, there are more than 20 government stores, and I think a number more waiting approval in principle. We have seen sales in this province are now increased significantly. They're averaging last 3 months about $20 million a month. And I expect that to continue. Just today, we changed an order and brought into force a section under the Cannabis Act, which will make it easier to close down illegal stores in a number of communities. And to allow the cannabis or community safety unit, which has been doing it for greater powers and tools, in particular as it relates to landlords who are leasing stores to illegal operations. And we're also currently studying a couple of things the industry has been asking for, such as being able to do farm gate sales and door-to-door delivery. So there's a lot of work going on, and we are working very closely with the industry.
Perfect. On the farm gate part, I see there's a question here on the Q&A. Just is any timeline on the farm gate part of it? Apparently it's been talked about for the last year and a half, and they're just asking if there's any progress on any timeline there.
The policy work is underway. There's a number of things that we're trying to get resolved, but I tell you, we are committed to getting it done.
Okay. We will hold you to that. I'm going to go, Minister Robinson, go back to you on housing a little bit and just talk about one of our past chair, Randy Webster, is asking, are there any plans to relocate resources from transitional housing versus homeless shelters? 3030 Gordon comes to mind down here. You're well aware of it, obviously, and Randy's business is right across the road, Midray. What are we doing to help the homeless situation in the Tri-Cities?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and I know that it's certainly challenging. And the short answer is we need more. We need more homes. In fact, there was a little article today came out in the paper that a physician who specializes in addictions and is working with people formerly from Oppenheimer who are now housed. You know, she's been working with folks that we moved into housing, and she says, and she's really clear, she says housing first works. We are seeing people stabilize. Yes, it's a transition and it's hard, but they stabilize, and we get them mental health supports, and we get them addiction supports, and we get them physically well. And part of what the challenge we have in the Tri-Cities is we don't have enough. And I have been certainly begging the mayors, all three of them, to work with us. It's not a lack of resource on the province's part. We have an opportunity here to deliver more housing. We need to work with local governments, and I you know, there are many local governments that are coming forward with bring more, do more. So you know, the ones that come to mind are like Nanaimo and Kelowna and Abbotsford and Mission now. Like there's lots of activity for doing supportive housing. It is different than shelters. And we've certainly seen, as a result of COVID, we've had to what we call thin the shelters because it was too many people. We couldn't keep distance. And so what that means is we've brought in emergency supports, emergency shelters. But I have to say, just as a human being, shelters are not homes, they're shelters. And so we need to build the supportive housing. We have a model that works. We need to identify additional lands in the Tri-Cities to build the kind of housing where people can stabilize, where they can get healthy, where they can get the supports they need so that they could function better. It improves their behavior. It makes them functioning citizens in our communities.
No, I agree. And I guess I'll do this with a little trepidation because I know the answer could go long, but Riverview lands as a possibility?
I mean, Riverview lands is certainly a possibility for lots of things, and it's work that I want to do in collaboration with the Coquitlam First Nation. And so there's certainly lots to be done there. One of the challenges in terms of situating people who have no motor vehicle, who have no way of getting around, and situating them on what is still considered fairly isolated land, it's hard to convince people to take a home on those lands because you can't walk to services. So one of the things that we do with supportive housing in terms of where to situate it, it needs to be in walking distance to a drugstore, to your physician, to a grocery store, right? Because people will have little kitchenettes and they need to go out and get things. They need to be able to get to, their eye appointment or their doctor appointment, and transit in and out of Riverview just isn't sufficient enough to make it a successful project. And that's the hesitation about using Riverview, is that it's not ideally situated. Ideal land is one that is located to an active core with a commercial activity.
Okay, moving on to another question, and maybe Mike, you might be able to get, both of you can jump into this one, but from the arts community, they're pointing out that there was concessions or adjustments made to in the insurance program for COVID for amateur sports to allow them to move forward. And the arts community is saying, will the provincial government be making the same order for amateur art organizations like music, dance, theater, and visual arts organizations that enrich our communities and citizens as they did for amateur sports? Mike?
Orders such as that are made in consultation or by working with the provincial health officer, Dr. Bonnie Henry. And so my expectation is that any plan that relates to arts organizations, for example, would involve WorkSafe, would involve the provincial health officer, and would likely be made with her input and her recommendations before the province came forward and did any like a concrete order.
So the arts community, however they're organized, should be talking.
Well, we're aware of the issues, and particularly in terms of you've got phase 3 and phase 4 and cultural events and the proximity of people. So we are aware of it, and there's work going into the challenges that they face.
Okay, and I hope that answers the question from, I believe it was from Diana of Coastal Sound. I'm going to go a little bit off a bit, just in that we're here, and Mike, I know you're aware of this. We're hearing from a few of our businesses, smaller businesses out there, that a lot of the larger landlords aren't cooperating and aren't partaking in the rent assistance subsidy program that was rolled out by the federal government, which you are partners in. The uptake and the numbers I've seen aren't very high to date. And I'm hearing stories from a few constituents in your riding, and I'm sure there's a couple up in Mr. Robinson's riding. They aren't partaking in the program. Is there anything we can do? And I understand both sides of the argument. I understand with the landlord side. I understand the tenant side. But is there any adjustments that need to be made or can be made moving forward to make this a little bit more palatable to small businesses, especially?
The challenge around this program is it's a federal program, and when a number of these, the feds have announced, here's a program, you are in it, or you're not. And if you're not in it, you don't get any of the resources. So the province really has no alternative but to be part of it. And you're right, we have received a lot of complaints and a lot of issues right from when this was going into the design of the program. I do know the Minister of Finance has been in discussions and has been raising this issue with her federal colleagues, her federal counterparts, and it's not just here in British Columbia, but it is in fact right across the country, that you've got to make some changes in this program, that it is difficult, it is rather bureaucratic, and we will continue to push for changes that make it easier, and recognizing the challenges that businesses are under with what was supposed to be, I think all of us hope for would resolve this issue.
I want to add one thing to that, if I might, Mike.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things that we did do, so we certainly heard, and the Minister of Finance certainly heard, and has been taking it back to her federal counterparts to advocate for changes to it. But one of the things that we did do that is that we brought in an eviction ban by preventing evictions of commercial tenants that could qualify. So we put in the piece that we could do to help mitigate that, but we want to fix the program. The ideal is to fix the program.
Yeah, and we appreciate you extending that, because that did, one of the constituents in Mike's riding was facing that problem, and they contacted me like the day before, and through Mike's constituency office, we got it confirmed that it's been extended, and they feel they got another month to figure this out. And I have been giving the feedback directly to Ottawa, because I'm on calls 3 days a week with them back there, the ministry. And I got an email from from Ron McKinnon this morning that he's looking into it too, and working and talk to all the parties involved. So it's just a top of mind issue for small business that we need to try to find a solution, whether it's give them the 50% so they can deal with it and take away the other part of it. It's one of the things that we need to adjust as we go forward. So I'm going to go now. Let's see what we got online here. We've got a bunch of stuff. Lots of cannabis questions. I don't know what that says about the Tri-Cities. But we also have a housing one here from Dave Teixeira. It says, in absence of new affordable housing being built, has there been any consideration to removing the ability for stratas to impose rental restrictions?
It's a good question, but there is affordable housing being built. So I think it's not an either or. Yep. One of the things that we learned about stratas is that any new stratas, really, they're very, very few are putting in rental restrictions. And so, that, because, I thought that too would be a challenge, but there's very, very, very few that are actually putting that in. One of the things, though, that's been, I think, absolutely fascinating as a result of COVID is that we're starting to see a bit of loosening up in the rental market. Some of it's anecdotal, but we're starting to see a vacancy rate, and there's actually some predictions I was reading just yesterday or today that they're predicting a 2 or 3% vacancy rate in the rental market. We haven't seen those numbers in a long time. Some of that's about tourism being down, and so Airbnb, people are putting their investments into the rental market, which is a good thing. We're seeing the impact of the spec tax that we brought in, the vacancy and spec tax, and that's certainly bringing thousands to market. So I think I'm hoping, but we're also seeing it. I'm cautiously optimistic, I think is the word, that we're going to see a little bit of relief on the rental front.
Okay. Again, lots of cannabis questions. I don't want to go to all of them, but Mike, why did the why did the government bring in a 20% tax on regulated vapable cannabis oil products when it simply their perceptions of tax, or maybe it's reality, pushes adults into the buying vape carts from the illicit market?
This was a issue that had considerable discussion, and it was very much done on a health recommendation basis. That's why it was put in place. The evidence that we had, the Ministry of Health and through our public health officers, was that we were seeing a significant increase in vaping, and that tougher restrictions were required, and that include the issue of the 2% tax, and that's why it was done on a health basis.
Okay. Switching, I got a question here on daycare, and it's top of mind for a lot of young parents out there, obviously. And it goes like, many working professionals with young children utilize daycare. With the current precautions in place, many daycares are now closing early to clean and implementing 10-day exclusions from daycare when a child shows any symptoms of illness. What will the government be doing to support these working professionals that will help pay for full-time daycare, but they're only receiving half a month or less during the cold and flu season? So it's just support for daycare, I think, is the general consensus there.
Well, one of the things that comes out of COVID, I think, that I've certainly been hearing, is people are recognizing that childcare is an economic issue. We've been saying that as a government. People historically haven't sort of recognized that, but COVID has really shone a light on that. And certainly in my calls with mayors, I'm hearing a lot around the province around the need for more childcare, more accessible and affordable childcare. One of the things that we did was we provided emergency funding to support childcare centers as part of our COVID response. So I think it's about 150 million that went into that to support, I think it's 4,500 spaces. And it is an ongoing issue. When we came into government, we have a significant plan to build a real robust and affordable childcare system. And we're partway through that, and we're not there yet. And so we need to keep going. And I know that the Minister of State for Childcare is continuing to roll out her plans. We're continuing to look at ways to incorporate childcare into a lot of our affordable housing, for example. We're asking the question, can we build in childcare spaces into that building? So this is it's a work in progress. We're going to keep at it. But I have to say, COVID has really shone a light for so many who didn't used to see it that way, and they get it now.
Okay. Mr. Farnworth from Facebook, we've got a question here. I'd like to ask your thoughts about the fact that many professional liability insurers are adding exemptions which will refuse to cover regulated health professionals in the event of COVID-19 transmission during a treatment. I recognize the province currently has an order in place that protects essential services from liability, but this is only in effect while the state of emergency is in place. The explanation given from underwriters is that it will become the industry standard. Given that COVID's going to be around for a while, anything we can do there?
Well, one of the pieces of legislation that we have just passed, in fact, will get royal assent later this afternoon, is called Bill 19. It's a COVID-19 related piece of legislation. And what it is going to allow us to do is to transition out of the state of emergency, so that we're not dealing with a case of the emergency, state of emergency that I declare Solicitor General once it ends. The order's made under that. And also, this will allow us to transition out of that state of emergency and keep orders in place for a longer period of time, so we're able to deal with some of the impacts that we are seeing, and that applies to a number of key areas. And we're very much aware of this issue of liability. And this is one of those areas where I expect that until we get a vaccine, we're going to have to be vigilant on. But we are aware of the issue.
Okay. So no big live events for the foreseeable future, I would think, too, right?
I think that's a pretty good guess.
Yeah, I'm planning on it for, I don't know, mid 2021, maybe. Minister Robinson, we talked about this briefly beforehand, but just to get it out there, because one of our members asked about setting a new filing date for strategy disclosure statements that would they benefit from a 3-month extension of their pre-sale period. The deadline is very difficult to meet. That's a finance ministry issue, is it? Can you just quickly?
Yeah. So this is a question I'm not prepared to answer. I'd have to find out. I'd certainly take that to the Minister of Finance. And
I knew you were. I wasn't putting you on the spot. I knew that was the answer, and I just wanted to make sure we got it out there and that we can maybe get an answer back to our member on that one. Looking on the questions here. So if you got any more questions, folks, please put them in there. Lots of cannabis questions, but I've got another one here from more of a justice question. It looks like Alberta is calling on the federal government to address the inconsistent rulings by review boards and to address standards on review board on what review board considered when reducing conditions for people not found criminally responsible for their crimes. What is the province of BC doing to ensure public safety is front of mind when review boards are making decisions?
Well, one of the things that we expect is when review boards are making decisions is that public safety should be a top priority, obviously, and that is something we feel quite strongly about. In terms of how the process works, it is independent from the justice system in the sense that it is medical professionals who are making those decisions. And so in terms of additional standards that the federal government may want to impose, we would certainly wanting to work with Ottawa if they are going down that. And it's one of those issues that I know has been not just Alberta, but other provinces have been concerned about.
Okay. Another question from the forum here is that the private sector has been forced to lay off people and taken a real hard hit. And I'm just wondering if the public sector, i.e. provincial government and crown corporations, have been forced to make similar decisions of laying off people or cutting back during this tough time. I mean, I haven't heard of, I don't know.
Well, I can tell you a couple of things. I mean, first off, I think the approach of every province has been as much as possible to, in fact, avoid layoffs. That's why we've had the CERB program. That's why you've seen the federal government, and today they announced their deficit is $343 billion, is to get as much money into the economy as possible to keep people working. So you've had the wage subsidy, and we know that there's a lot more that needs to be done. Within provincial government itself, we have the $5 billion additional COVID response, recognizing that challenges that the private sector is facing. I can tell you though that as MLA, we foregone our pay increase that was scheduled to take effect this year, and that cabinet ministers, because the budget is into deficit, will see a 10% reduction in their pay while the budget is in deficit. But I think the focus has been, to much as possible, keep people working, in the private sector, and those in the public sector as well.
if I could also just add, I think people ought to understand part of what's happened when COVID hit, and everyone is realizing what this was going to mean for the economy. It also meant that we had to bring in some additional resources to help other people. So just to give you just one example around the temporary rent supplement, brand new program, public service, we tasked them to put in a temporary rent supplement for people to make rent or help make rent. It doesn't cover all of rent, for people who are losing their jobs, people who were being laid off. So service workers in particular, people in the restaurant industry, hotel industry, tourism industry, those that were hardest hit. And that meant we needed to have people to process all of that work. 80,000 applications were made over a period of, I think, a couple of weeks. And it was completely overwhelming. So we used people from the residential tenancy branch because evictions weren't happening. And we backfilled and helped and moved them over to BC Housing to get them to deliver this. So the public service was really tasked with actually doing double duty or triple duty I was certainly getting reports from my staff at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, phone calls as late as 9 o'clock at night, because they were, doing a lot of work to get these programs into place so that we can take care of people.
You weren't up at 3 o'clock in the morning on the phone, were you?
Not on the phone, but I was up trying to figure out how we were going to fix things.
Yeah, there's a lot of sleepless nights for a lot of people in the last 4 months. And I think the civil service on the federal level and the provincial level has done an amazing job. And I see it on the federal level and how they pivoted and implemented these programs that are billions of dollars in weeks when it normally would take months, if not years, to do. Yes, there's been some missteps and some things that need to be adjusting, but I think the civil service has really stepped up and done a great job in most cases. I've got a couple more questions here just quickly. Understanding significant negative impacts of COVID-19 pandemic, do you anticipate there will be need to be shifts in the government previous commitments towards social health initiatives such as the Foundry Centers, community health centers, affordable housing, etc.? I don't know who wants to take that one.
I'll start. Mike can wrap it up. He's usually very good at wrap up. I think it actually, COVID showed cracks in some of those systems. Talking with people who perhaps knew that we were committed on the housing front and saw that we were actively building housing. I mean, 23,000 units in a couple of years to get underway. Just to give you some sense of scale, in the previous 16 years under the previous government, that's the total they did over 16 years. And we were taking that. So we were on steroids already, doing this, delivering on housing. But we certainly are seeing what happens when people don't have housing and what the impact is. Same thing around mental health. We are seeing some significant impacts, particularly for young people. I have to say, I'm quite worried about young people to have to live in a time of crisis when they don't have a lot of life experience to know and to have the optimism that we'll get through this. The young people who didn't get a grad ceremony, didn't get to go to a prom, and for them, it feels like life is over. Us old people, we get it. We know that there's life afterwards, but they might not recognize it at their age. So I think there's some real challenges. And for me, I think it's a stronger commitment to make sure that people are healthy. Everyone wants everyone to be healthy. And this is all a part of delivering on health.
Just to add on that, I think one of the key areas you're going to see, and it's not just here in British Columbia, but in fact is right across the country, as we deal with COVID and also prepare for a second wave and through the long term, has been the issue around long-term care facilities. And the absolute need for reform in that sector, and that healthcare and seniors is I think going to be an issue that is very much going to continue to be in the forefront. And so in fact, what COVID has done is show the need to strengthen those programs so that the rest of our healthcare system is in fact able to cope when we find ourselves in situations such as this.
Okay, I'm going to sneak one more quick question in, Minister Farnworth, for you. One of the major hurdles for small craft cannabis growers is many municipalities are zoning them out of jurisdictions which prevent them from moving forward with federal licensing. Is the government aware of this hurdle? And if they are, is there anything they can do to address it?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we are aware of it. And one of the things we're trying to do is to work with local governments and I don't know why communities, in fact, would want to zone craft producers out. And because what is happening is that those communities are losing out on significant opportunity. But having said that, there are many parts of the province where communities are welcoming them in. The Kootenays, for example, I know certainly in parts of the Okanagan, but we are aware of the issue and are working with local government to encourage them to recognize that there's significant economic opportunity here for their community, and the small scale ones often avoid a lot of the challenges that we've seen with some of those major massive grow up facilities that you have seen in Langley, for example, in the more heavily populated metropolitan areas.
Okay. And there's one more question quickly, just reiterating the childcare issue. If they've got to go home for 10, if they send a child home for 10 days, that puts a lot of pressure on the parent who may not have as much coverage at work. So just to reiterate that when that was asked again. But we're at time. That went very quickly. We do appreciate so much. If you want any closing comments, Minister Robinson, quickly, anything you want to say to close?
Sure. I just want to say, you know, what a pleasure it is to reach out and connect with the Tri-Cities folks. And but I miss everybody. Like, I really miss the contact that we have. I miss the opportunity to engage, and I'm going to miss the chamber events, the traditional chamber events, where catch up with people, catch up with friends, hear what's going on the ground. The isolation, I think we're all feeling it, but doing my best to get out to support local business. I want to again commend the chamber for pushing that, and remind everybody to support each other. That we're a successful community as a Tri-Cities because we do take care of each other, and that we need to keep doing that, and we need to take care of our local businesses as well. And so I hope to see you out on some patio in the near future, or maybe in the park in Port Coquitlam with a beer, because we can do that in Port Coquitlam. And just stay healthy, everyone.
Okay, Mr. Farnworth.
No, I just want to very quickly close by saying I really appreciated the opportunity this afternoon to talk with members, and I really appreciate the work that the chamber is doing. And I can't go much longer because I now have to get and chair the Legislative Review Committee. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Just quickly, the winners of the gift cards, the $100, $150 to Coquitlam Forest goes to Becca from Citadel Speech. $150 to Passaplo with Francis from the YWCA, and Paul from Next Leaf Solutions gets $150 to Gabby and Jules. Go crazy on pie. There's a joke there, but I'm not going to do it. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time. Please let us know if you need anything. Have a great day.